Hello, I'm Mike Daisey. I'm an author, a monologuist, and a working artist. And I'm here to talk to you today about one thing, because that's about how much time there is. And that is, of course, a lie, because any talk is always the woven threads of everything you talk about and the lies of omission, everything that you could have talked about but you did not. And so what I want to talk to you about is a project that I've worked on. Some parts of it are very, very public, other parts less so. And I particularly want to talk about this idea that occurred to me a couple of years ago, that the transition that was happening at that moment, this is mid-2009, a little late in 2009, that the personal devices that we use, that many of you are using right now to text and Twitter as the events of the day roll up and you're trying to plot what you are going to do next, that those devices have an incredibly personal relationship to us, that they transformed at the moment that they became smartphones, that they became, in a sense, closer to us even than our lovers. They are, in a sense, parts of our body now. We need them, and we use them to communicate with everything. And so I had the idea that this monologue that I was working on, this story that I was telling, that it should talk about the circumstances under which the devices are made, and it should combine that story with the story of Steve Jobs, whom I had admired my entire life, not so much for his humanitarian concerns, as he utterly lacks those sort of characteristics, but more for the fact that he'd led us through 3 different metaphor shifts in what it meant to use computing. And the idea was that the monologue would fuse together those metaphor shifts as a way of talking about a larger metaphor shift, the shift of actually talking about labor. Because the extraordinary idea that I had, the hope I had, was that the devices themselves, because they were personal to us, and distinctive, because every time we buy a new one, it is something almost to be celebrated, because people will line up to buy them. Because of these characteristics, we care about these devices in a way that we do not normally care about, say, a t-shirt and how it was made, or where practically everything we touch comes from. We divorce ourselves from the labor concerns of this world. We do not think about it. We make a point of not thinking about it, and our corporatism helps us not think about it by carving off the means of production and putting them somewhere else. The hope was to find a way to make it work. And so I built the show as a weapon. I built it as a virus. The idea was to literally infect people. This is that thing where you say literally, but you mean metaphorically, but you say it that way to emphasize it. We literally made it. Oh, there you are. We literally made it to infect people. The idea was that it would get inside of people, because it was designed to evoke human responses by using heightened imagery, by using all the tools that I'd spent my whole career sculpting and shaping. Another person who used nearly the identical technique is Upton Sinclair in his book, The Jungle, which many of people are unaware is actually a fictional book, that the stories in the jungle did not actually happen, or rather, they are accounted for, but did not actually literally happen to Upton Sinclair. And in many cases, there's no documented evidence for many of the most atrocious things that are listed out in page after page of absolute agony. There's no documented evidence that those specific abuses occurred, though there is no question that the abuses that happened and were documented in the jungle, that those things happened. There was never any debate about that, except there was actually. For years and years after the book came out, it was a huge to-do. The President of the United States actually came out against Upton Sinclair, which I am thankful that Obama never weighed in about me, but to have the President of the United States come out and say, and in fact use the term muckraker, which was used then to sort of denote someone who rakes through the muck, not in any sort of positive way, but literally to stir up trouble and dissent, to create hysteria. But of course, when there was enough push that people actually examined the circumstances under which their meat was being made in that age, they discovered that in fact it was horrendous, and the more and more pressure was applied over time, the point of that story began to penetrate. My own story has had a similar trajectory, although Upton Sinclair is much wiser, smarter, and more talented than I am. He never lied to Ira Glass, which is wise, because if you violate the rules of the culture, you will pay for it. But that has to be weighed against the fact that the job of an artist is actually to violate rules. And there are many better artists than me who I'm sure can parse that line much more delicately. I feel like I probably could parse it very well if I was given a second pass through, but that's not actually how our life works. You get one pass for each thing you do, and you can look back with hindsight and how you could have done it even better. But honestly, if I could have done it even better, I would have liked to have gotten a space pony and a golden castle as well. And I would like to have told the story with incredible journalistic rigor, yet somehow also made it unbelievably penetrating in a human emotional way. I would have liked to have researched it for years and years with my vast resources that I absolutely do not possess. I would have liked for even one journalist of the many I contacted when I was researching it to ever return a single call or email. I would have liked any of these things to happen so that the work I made would be exquisitely perfect. But that's not the fucking world I live in. So in the world I live in, I told this story. And I'm not here today actually to talk about what happens to the story and me. Because what's important is that the story, that virus, is much larger than I am as an artist. I see myself as a storyteller, as a conduit for ideas that my culture needs to hear, things that are in conflict, I hope, with the dominant paradigms of my culture, things that we may not have considered, things that might actually pierce the sort of daily coma we put ourselves into. And so what I am here to talk about is the fact that this story, having fled out from me, is now being told again and again and again. I released the monologue that I had told under an open license so that anyone in the world can tell the story for themselves. It's free, it's royalty-free, and it's open source. Some people take the story and retell it as a way to talk about the media scandal and where I am implicated. Others simply talk about labor standards. And in fact, a company is performing it in Beijing right now. It just opened 2 nights ago. It'll run for the next 14 days in Beijing, performed in Mandarin, and it will tour down to Shenzhen and Hong Kong. That story now belongs to them. They take it back and they will do with it whatever they wish. I put no constraints on it because that was the point of words, the point of art, to try to make change possible and visible, to try to connect in a human way with other people, because perhaps that, I would argue, is what has been missing in the discourse. That human connection, where we actually see the facts we have always known, but we suddenly see them in a new light, as though from a new angle, because we finally care. Thank you so much, and have a great day.